What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good of Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today I want to talk to you about situational decision making, which is likely one of the most important ideas that you can understand when you are pursuing your goals. It's one thing to set a goal and to get started on a goal. It's another thing to pursue it and to keep going. Most people have trouble with the second part. Of course, getting started is a big part of it. You have to overcome, a whole bunch of doubt in your mind or questioning and, things in your environment that you have to push against. But it is the keep going. It is the part that allows you to actually achieve the goal, the continuation of action that keeps people from doing what they want to achieve. So understanding this idea is imperative. And for me, this is something that I really have started to understand, especially in the last couple of years. I started thinking about it a long time ago, but I've really only started to really understand it and recently started to be able to articulate it. So that's what I want to do today. And the reason that it's coming out today is twofold. Number one, I had somebody gave me a book called The Dark Horse, which I highly suggest that you go and grab. I'll make sure to put the link in the description so you guys can get it. But thank you so much, you know who you are, for the book. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably be putting this idea out there, or I wouldn't have clarified this idea better. So thank you for that. The other thing was I recently got back from the Rolex 24-hour race. For those of you who aren't race fans, it is a 24-hour race, hence the name of the race, and it is a bunch of high-class cars, essentially, that are souped up to be race cars. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, and other fancy cars that are souped up to be race cars. And it's actually a super fun event. The race starts on a Saturday, but they do all these events beforehand. On Thursday, they have a different kind of race. On Friday, they do a big car show where people bring in their cars and they do it out in front of the Daytona Hotel, which is a nice fancy hotel. So it's actually this big hole to do. And I've always been a car guy. So, I've gone to races my whole life. My dad has raced. My family has always had cars. And I've always had decent enough cars. But I've always wanted other cars. Recently, I've made some huge shifts in my life in the last 12 to 18 months. Got divorced, got out of a business, both of which I had for 10 years, and both of which I doggedly pursued for that 10 years. Not always perfectly, of course. The marriage especially, it wavered because we just didn't have values that aligned very well. But I pursued them, and understanding this idea of situational decision making helped me to make a change in my life that was necessary to make. Hard to make, but necessary to make. Partly because I knew that there was more in my life that I wanted, that I knew that I could achieve. And since there is only one life that we know of, that we can be sure of, why should I fuck around and not try and make that happen? That maybe sounds a little harsh, especially when you're talking about getting a divorce and leaving a business of which I cared about everybody in the business. I cared about, my ex-wife for sure, but I knew that our values didn't align and that we weren't going to be able to move in the direction that I wanted, or she wanted for that matter. That's what I believed. And then with the business, I didn't see it being able to, after 10 years, it had gotten to a point where I didn't think that 10 years moving forward, I would have been any closer to where I believed I could be, and the impact that I could have, not only in my own life, but in the lives of those around me. So I had to make some changes. And going to this race, this is a long lead up to where I'm going, so be patient with me. In going to this race and being around these cars and being around a higher level of lifestyle, if you will, opened my eyes more. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been divorced and out of the business for over a year at this point. But it opened my eyes more to the drive of wanting to do more. Now, you might think that that's shallow because you're like, oh, Jerry, it's a bunch of cars. Like shallow, pretty shallow if that's what drives you. Like, that's not the only thing that drives me. That's not the only thing. But I'm also not ignorant to the fact that people want things. Like, it's not cool in society right now to want things, and yet people are fucking unhappy and unfulfilled in their life, and it's not because they need things to make them happy. If you can't be happy without the things, for sure, you're a fucked up mess and you need to figure that out. However, definitely the things that you're passionate about, the things that bring some happiness and joy to your life, that, add an extra bit of excitement, those things I believe you should work to have in your life, but you have to earn them. You have to get to them. They don't just fall in your lap. And cars, for me, is one of those things that excite me. Like getting in a car and driving fast and potentially pissing a lot of people off along the way, bobbing and weaving through traffic. Tons of fun. Enjoy it immensely. So I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to achieve that. So being around all these cars that are all $250,000 cars plus, give or take, reminded me that I am pursuing something. Yes, I have the purpose that I ultimately want, but I have these other things that I want too, which is partly the magic of getting around other people and other environments that actually support what you're trying to achieve in life instead of, your normal environment, which generally for most people may not be the case, but that's another conversation for another day. So those two things together, having the book that helped me clarify this idea and help me be able to articulate it better, and going through, being at the event, being at the race, being around this environment, these people, these cars, this higher level of being that excited me and drove me to, gave me another boost to want to work harder and do more. Those two things bring this idea of situational decision making. Because to go back to where I was just a year ago, having spent 10 years of my life trying to make things work, I was in the same business for 10 years. And I would say for 6 or 7 of those years, I thought for sure that business was going to be the one that made it work. That business model, what I was doing, the fitness studio, was going to be the one that made it work. I was going to make that one work, and then I was going to replicate it and do it, all around the region, and then so on, and let it spread from there. That's what I ultimately believed. Eventually, I realized that maybe this isn't the thing that is going to allow me to do that. Now, there were a bunch of reasons for that, of which I'm not going to go into all of those, or any of them for that matter, because they're not important. But I realized that wasn't going to be the case. So I had to make a decision. In my mind, originally, I thought that was the path. That is the path that I am going down. And because of that, I went further down that path than I needed to go. I kept just running in the brick walls, and I kept just busting my head open for no damn reason, trying to pursue this bigger purpose that I had envisioned. And this is what a lot of people do. A lot of people choose a path, and they go down the path. Now, most people aren't willing to just continue to bust their head against the wall like me, but I'm stubborn and hard-headed. The hard-headedness helps a ton when it comes to busting your head against the wall because it doesn't hurt as much, or at least you tell yourself that. The stubbornness is sometimes very useful, but sometimes not useful at all. Nonetheless, I am very willing and able to just pursue a thing indefinitely, which, like I said, it has its perks, but also has its downfalls. I went after this goal in this path for too long. Many people don't go long enough. So what they do is they go down a path, they hit some roadblock. It can be a tiny little hiccup. It can be a schedule change. It can be you have to work more. It can be that all of a sudden you stop making a little bit of progress, or the thing stops working. It can be anything, but they hit just a little hiccup and then they stop because in their mind, they have chosen a path. And if that path doesn't work and then something happens, then I can't choose another path. And that is the reason why people quit. That is the reason. Now, there's a bunch of underlying psychological factors. You convince yourself that you're a different kind of person or that you can't achieve things. There's a bunch of mental factors that I've talked about in the past, and I'll talk about plenty more in the future. But when it comes to the action in and of itself, we choose a path, we hit a roadblock, and then we convince ourselves that we can't go forward anymore because the path has quit working. The truth of the matter is that it is one path of many paths that we have to choose from. It is one way, one mountain that we could potentially start to go up of many other mountains that we could choose from, of many other ways that we could go. There's an idea that is worth remembering, that is worth thinking about, that I've been thinking about often. It's something that I heard a long time ago, and when you hear something that seems simple and you're like, yeah, I get it, you probably don't really get it. You have to think about the idea more often in order to really understand what it means. So the idea is simply, you don't know, when you start something, you don't know what you don't know. So when you start down a path, you have no fucking clue all the things that you're going to run into, all of the obstacles that could potentially pop up. If the thing's going to work out for you, you can do a bunch of research, you can look, you can ask people questions, you can vet, you can do all of those things, but all you're doing is taking a best guess, is all you're really doing. So as you go and as you move, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's ahead of you. You should and can, which we'll talk about in a little bit, take proactive steps to try and go ahead and overcome some of the obstacles that you think are gonna pop up from your history and from other people's history. But again, you don't know. Like, you have no clue. Hey, guess what? COVID happened. The huge government hoax just thrown upon everybody. We're shutting the world down. Hey, I didn't know. What are you going to do? Like, you have to adapt, you have to change, and you have to choose to do something different. So if you can understand that anytime you start something, anytime you're pursuing something, anytime you're going after a goal, that you don't know what you don't know as you move forward, always. If you're moving forward and you're going after something new, you have no clue. Or I would assume, I would go at it with the assumption that you don't know, that you just can't predict. You can do your best. You can crunch numbers, you can research, you can do all the things, but you cannot be 100% certain. So if you can understand that idea, then it makes your life a lot easier. So the idea of situational decision making then is essentially being able to make decisions on the go as you come up and meet these I don't know what this looks like or I don't know what this is situations. So that you can continue to move in the direction of your goal. Okay? To understand this, and this is the idea that I got from Dark Horse, which really helped me a lot. It's going to take a second to unpack, but I think that it's going to be worth the effort. The idea is called gradient ascent, and it comes from machine learning. And I'm going to use, speaking of machine learning, I'm going to use Grok to help us understand what that means. By the way, if you don't know what Grok is, if you use OpenAI, OpenAI is not open. It's actually very biased. So if you use OpenAI, if you use ChatGPT, sorry, that's what most people know it as, but if you use ChatGPT, I would tell you not to use it. Go and download X and use Grok. Grok is X's ChatGPT. Grok is an unbiased AI search engine, or whatever you want to call it. ChatGPT is not unbiased. It is definitely, most certainly, giving you biased information. So that's good. That's my pitch for that. Nonetheless, so I went to Grok and I said, hey, Grok, simply explain the idea of gradient ascent. So here's what Grok has to say about that. Actually, I'm going to take a drink before I read this. Okay, like I said, gradient ascent is a idea used in machine learning. Grok says gradient ascent is an optimization technique used to find the maximum value of a function. Here's how it works in simple terms. Number one, start with a point. You begin at some point on the function you're examining. So to translate that into our terms, your point is where you are. That's where you're starting. So your function is your goal that you're after. This is what I'm trying to achieve. This is my goal. My point is where I'm starting. Okay? So goal, point. That's what we're currently working with. Number two, calculate the gradient. The gradient or slope at that point tells you which direction to move to increase the function's value the most. Think of it like going uphill. The gradient points uphill. So number two, you're going to choose a path that looks like it is the most likely path to move you towards your goal. So if your goal is to lose 20 pounds and you say, okay, currently I believe that the best path for me to do that is to start doing the keto diet. This is just what a lot of people do. That's why I'm using this example. But you go, okay, best path currently is to use the keto diet. Bam, you have chosen a slope, a gradient to start to go up. That is your mountain, your current mountain that you're going to start climbing to get to your goal or function in this case. Okay, step three, step in the direction of the gradient. You move a small step in the direction of the gradient because each step should make the function's value larger. So, number one, I'm going through this in sequence, so I'm going to back up. Number one, you've chosen a goal and you know that this is where you're starting. Number two, you have decided that the keto diet is the best path for you to take. You've chosen that in order for me to lose 20 pounds, the keto diet is the best path for me to take. Number three, step in the direction of the gradient. That means start taking action. Start to do things that mean eating a keto diet, eliminating carbohydrates, increasing your protein intake, increasing your fat intake, whatever that looks like. So start taking action. Start moving toward the gradient or toward the slope to increase the function, aka, and move toward the goal to increase the likelihood that you achieve the goal. Okay? Number four, repeat. Keep recalculating the gradient at your new position and move again until you can't go any higher or you reach a satisfactory maximum. So you go and you move, and then all of a sudden you go, I don't know, something stopped happening. I stopped losing weight. So now I need to start back at the top. What's my goal still? What point am I at now? I've lost 7 pounds. What change can I make that is the most likely thing that will allow me to move quickly in the direction that I want to go to get to that 20 pounds? Does that mean increasing my protein intake? Does that mean decreasing my fat intake? Does that mean maybe implementing some carbohydrates? What change, what deviation can I make in order for me to move in that direction? Make a decision. Number three, step in the direction of the gradient, aka take action, implement the decision, move forward. When things stop working, repeat. It is literally that cycle over and over and over again. Okay? So, if you can understand that idea, gradient ascent, constantly moving in the direction of your goal, adjusting your point or adjusting your action along the way, then there is almost no reason why you cannot achieve the goal that you want. There is almost no reason that you cannot achieve the goal that you want. If you can understand that idea, situational decision making. Now, like I said in the beginning of this, there are a whole lot of other things that you're going to have to overcome. You have to overcome your environment. You have to overcome other people's tendency to push back against you because people don't like change and they want you to stay the same. You want you to stay the same, and you're going to have to overcome your own tendency to pull your ass back down into the bucket of crabs. So there's a lot of other things that you're going to have to overcome along the way. One of the things that you just need to drop and let the fuck go of is complexity, thinking that it is complex. And if you can buy into situational decision making and understand that you're not going to go down the same path the whole time, it's just going to work for some period of time. You're going to have to reevaluate along the way. And as long as you are willing to do that, you will achieve your goal. Then you'll do it. Okay, so there are two things that you can do in order to actually implement this so that you're not just stumbling all over yourself and continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, aka starting and then stopping, and then starting and then stopping, and then eventually convincing yourself that you can achieve what you want to achieve. I'm going to take another drink. Okay, two things that we can do. One is proactive and one is reactive. The reactive one we've already talked about, that is situational decision making, but I'll go into a little bit more tactical, some tactical ideas on how you can implement that. But let's first talk about the proactive things that you can do. So one thing people are terrible at is regular evaluation. Progress reviews. You know, like back in the day in elementary school and high school, you had progress reports, you had report cards, and then you had progress reports. Your progress reports were not quite as important, but it gave you an understanding of changes you need to make, excuse me, so that your report card was better. In your life, you should do the same thing. Progress reviews. Regularly reviewing your progress so that you can keep moving forward, so that you can achieve the goals you're after. Regular can be at a number of different intervals. Most people do that once a year, and that's why most people fail, and most people suck at achieving goals. Yearly is potentially part of the plan, but it is not the whole plan. At a very minimum, it should be quarterly, every 3 months, that you're reviewing your progress and seeing how you're doing and seeing if you're moving forward. That is a very, very minimum, because most people quit after 6 weeks. Most people quit after 6 weeks of doing something. And that's generous. That's probably pretty generous. So if we know most people quit at 6 weeks, that means that we should probably bump our minimum down to every month. At least, for God's sake, once a month, doing a review. How's my progress? What am I doing? Am I moving forward? Because progress is what motivates us. People get unmotivated because they quit making progress. So the more you can close that gap, the more likely you can keep going. Not to say that you're still not going to hit plateaus, that you're still not going to stop, that shit's not going to happen, that life's not going to punch you in the face. Those will all still happen. Those are all facts. That's all going to be true. But if you can proactively try and overcome some of these things, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache. So at least minimum, a monthly review of how things are going. At the end of the month, last day of the month, hey, how are things this past month? What do I need to change in order to keep moving forward this upcoming month? How am I going to do it? Then do it. Okay? If you're feeling extra feisty, then do a review every week. Doesn't have to be quite as in-depth. It can be relatively basic. How was this past week? How do I want this upcoming week to look? You don't want to make drastic changes week to week because you just don't know if something's working. So a weekly review is more of like, what are some small things that I can tinker with here? And I just want to make sure that I'm moving forward. Okay? So please, for God's sake, implement progress reviews so that you save yourself some sanity. At least every month, every week, just as a simple, a little something to make sure that you're staying on track. And then quarterly, you can go more in depth. How well have I made progress toward my goal? Did I achieve my goal? If I did, great. What's the next thing that I want to achieve? Because if you're doing something and you're pursuing something, I'm going to assume that it is important to you. And if it is, then you want to keep going. So how am I doing? What do I want to implement now? Do I want to just stay the path? Do I need to change something drastically? What does that look like? And that's what you want to do each quarter. You can make those bigger changes. Okay? So regular progress reviews. That's how you stay proactive and keep moving forward. Okay? The other one, which is more reactive, is situational decision making. Situational decision making. In order to do this effectively, you have to also have situational awareness. This is an idea that comes from law enforcement. Situational awareness is simply being aware of your environment and being aware of what's going around you and being aware of what's happening. It is opening your eyes to the things that are going on around you so that you can respond to them if something happens. One of the examples that they'll use if you've ever gone to a shooting class of some sort is making sure that you sit with your back against the wall as far back as you can in a restaurant so that you can see all of the entrances to the restaurant so that if someone comes in and shit starts to hit the fan, you can respond to it. You can see everything in front of you. Your eyes, your vision is open to everything in front of you so that if shit starts to happen and starts to go down, you can respond to it. You can do something about it. If your back is to everything and you're blind to it, then you can't do anything about it and you can't make any decisions. And there's a good chance that you end up getting shot in the back of the head. That's what we don't want, both in the restaurant example, but also in our life. We don't want to be blind to things. We're going to be blind to some things, but we have to work to open our eyes as best we can to as much as we can. Otherwise, we're going to go, well, I guess I'm just the type of person that can't achieve these goals. But that's not true. You can and you will if you open your eyes. So that requires situational awareness. That requires, which means, translated in our terms, if I'm pursuing a goal and things are going well, and then all of a sudden they stop going well, you stop feeling motivated, you feel like all of a sudden things aren't flowing as well, whatever the reason, you have to be aware that that is happening so that you can ask yourself, why is this happening? Most people just feel a thing and then stop. There's no gap there. There's no thinking through of what is going on. So situational awareness allows us to pay attention as we move forward so that when those droughts happen, which they will for everybody, you're not special. You're not this snowflake because, whatever, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me. No, that's not the way that it is. Everyone goes through droughts. Everyone has sad moments. Everyone has sad emotional times. The question is, what do you do about it? How aware are you of it? And then how are you responding to it instead of reacting to it? So when you build that situational awareness, when you open your eyes to the things that are happening around you, then you can make a situational decision and do something different instead of do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's what we want. If we have awareness, then we can make a decision and then we can keep moving in the direction of the slope. We can keep moving forward. We can move toward the function and expand the function and increase the likelihood that we achieve our goal, which is what we want. So when you do those things, regular progress reviews, which will also help you build awareness, by the way. When you build that into your life, it literally increases your awareness. Because if you do it at a regular interval, then you're thinking about it. Then you actually start paying attention and you start recognizing these things. And then you recognize that this feeling popped up all of a sudden, and that feeling generally leads you down a path where you quit shit. But you can stop that and you can move in a different direction. So when you put those proactive things in your life, you are building awareness in and of itself, which allows you to then be ready When that reactive time comes in, when that time when you have to make a smart decision because something unknowable popped up, that pops up, then you can make a decision. Then you can make a choice, and it can be at least more rational. Not going to be perfect, but it's at least going to be more rational. Okay? Take those two ideas, progress reviews and situational decision making, and when you mingle them together, you increase the likelihood of moving toward the function and achieving it. Goodness forbid you actually do what you want in life. You actually achieve the things that you want in life. One life, one choice, one decision is all that you need to make in order to keep going. Okay? One chance. Awesome. Thanks you guys for listening to me babble. I appreciate you so much. Till next time.